Hello, it's Tennyson Williams here. In this video I wanted to talk about improvising with music, and because it's been quite apparent to me, I do a lot of studying and research on the internet, and I see a lot of people asking questions about how do you improvise on guitar. So I'm going to reveal some things to you in this video. And first of all, I'd like to talk about, now, why is it important to learn how to improvise? Some people have never even thought about that before. Well, for one reason, and actually the main reason, is that it opens up the ultimate creativity in your playing, and it gives you the ability to jam over any song, so you don't have to always memorize solos and be pressured like when you're playing on stage and stuff. But also, if you want to be active in the creative process of writing music, it really is the key way to come up with songs, the structures of them, or even solos, and both. So that's one reason you should do it. A lot of people think that just jazz musicians improvise, and that of course is not true. Everybody should learn how to improvise, at least a little bit. So how do you get good at improvising? And here's the truth, at least from my perspective, and I've had other guitarists agree with me before, some really experienced guitarists. Everybody thinks that the key to unlocking the amazing power of improvisational playing is by way of scales and modes. This is true to a degree, but scales and modes, especially if you are new to playing guitar, don't really explain anything. If you want to become really efficient and have an efficient understanding of music and how it works, it's kind of built upon this aha moment, these epiphanies. The only way that you can track those down is to just start experimenting. I know that's not the answer that you wanted to hear, because that's not like, oh, A plus B equals C. Obviously, scales and modes are great. One reason that they're great is because a lot of them, like the harmonic and melodic minor modes, have very distinctive sounds. And perhaps just for some reason you've never heard anything like that before, never really listened to classical music much. So it can be a doorway to a bigger world. But the key to learning how to improvise is, it comes about from playing for a third of the time, practicing, and spending, or at least 2/3 or half of your time, listening to music. So I've got some CDs here. A lot of you are going to be like, what the hell are you doing? But these are just a small sampling of the CDs that are in my collection that I've jammed with. I have Bill Evans' trio, was a Waltz for Debbie. It's a, like I said, it's a trio, it's jazz. There's no guitar in it, it's all piano. It's good to study a lot of different styles of music. Jazz can be kind of funky. I remember the first time that I heard jazz music, I could not comprehend it. And so that's another thing, is discipline. I hear so many people say, oh, I don't like that style of music, so they don't even bother with it. Well, at first you don't. I mean, you know, I hated Pink Floyd for years. I know a lot of you were like, oh, you can't do that, that's a sin. Eventually it came around, but I worked at it. You have to work at it a little bit. Great thing about jamming with albums that don't have any guitar or don't feature the instrument that you're trying to master is that you facilitate that role. You're the star then. And so you can really hear what's going on and match it up and see how you match up as that one special person who has the exclusive instrument in a band setting. Again, Miles Davis, which was the first jazz that I ever heard, and it took me a while to get my ears wrapped around it, but once I did, I'm really thankful that I did, because the rhythmic structures of jazz music are incredible. So that taught me a lot. I have this album by, I think it's Nas is how you say it, it's a rapper, old school rap. I mean, I'm a fan of rap, I just don't have a lot of rap albums. Jammed with this one too. I have the poster children for Bluegrass, Nickel Creek. Jammed a lot with this one, great stuff. Tito Puente's Golden Latin Jazz All-Stars. Tito Puente music is amazing. Huge proponent of Latin music and Latin jazz. Cuban jazz, is stuff like that is such a revealer of great information. No matter what style of music you're trying to become proficient at. Django Reinhardt, did an article on my site about him. The man. I studied his stuff for a long time as well. Brian Setzer, which is all I played for about 2.5 years, was like rockabilly, jazz type stuff. And it got old, loved it at the time, but it taught me a lot. I came back to heavy metal, I think, right after studying rockabilly last. And just the things that I came back to the table with were absolutely phenomenal. The album that I first started jamming with wasn't this one exactly, but what I first learned to improvise over was Santana. Absolutely phenomenal stuff. Santana's a great way for any beginning guitarist to get into because it just uses mostly like major, minor, pentatonic, and Dorian modes. Tomatito, and then this is flamenco music. It's a specialty, obviously. Flamenco guitar is very difficult and a mastered craft, but you can still apply even a lot of like clean electric sounds to it. B.B. King, that's another thing. A lot of people who watch my videos and follow my lessons are blues people. I was probably about 12, and the first time I'd ever heard blues in my life, or straight blues, was on PBS, and it was a B.B. King concert. And I thought it was the weirdest thing I'd ever heard. I could not grasp it at all. But after listening to it for a while, yeah. And then for the metalheads out there, I have Black Label Society's first album. I have like all their albums. The rest of them aren't so good anymore. But you can certainly even jam along with your own style, your own preference in music. So, anyways, the key is for most guitars, because, okay, you have to think of it like this. In the beginning, all that you know in terms of what could unlock your musical potential is musical theory. And I'd like to kind of look at the word theory. Theory as in theoretical, as in theoretically this is a way to explain something to another person. But it's theory. It's theoretically not exactly true. It's not set in stone. Those rules are there are made to be broken. And like my sister was telling me the other day, in like the 1700s, any classical composer, of course, was very theoretically disciplined. However, it was almost an insult in those days if you composed a piece, somebody else performed your piece, and they didn't expand upon it live, as in improvising upon it. Even the classical music is so structured. These are principles that a lot of people have abandoned, and it does take a little bit of effort. You have to really be willing to put in the time to experiment with. So I would definitely suggest jamming along with mini albums, because I started to explain, say you just started playing guitar, and so instantly you start studying scales and modes. Well, they don't exactly click right away. That's the problem. They're great. I always look at them from a perspective of they're great for picking and the fretting hand, because they're all kind of different from each other in terms of the patterns. And so they're great as exercises and warm-ups. And they do establish key notes in your mind. But they're kind of tricky to comprehend at once. And so when I first started playing, I didn't touch any scales or modes or learn any for about 3 years. I learned to improvise really insanely well, though, first, because I trained my ear. It's something that happens naturally. And so one day I thought, I heard something about, I think, like the Mixolydian mode. So I went and looked it up, and I started playing it, and I was like, oh, I've been playing that for years. So give yourself time to develop first. You don't have to jump into anything. It's okay to study these things along the way. Just don't put all your eggs in one basket. Because the truth of the matter is, if you start from scratch learning these things, as you go around, you start picking up a scale, you start picking up a mode, a little bit about chords, theory, construction of what chords go with scales and modes, modulation, and so forth, and you start making the circle. What happens when you reach the top of that circle, you make this huge rounded curve here, you end up right back at the beginning, because you realize kind of at the end, well, I'm glad I studied those things, but it didn't really exactly fully change me as a player. I do recognize that a lot of musicians are very technical and analytical, and everybody has a different learning style. So if you're that person, go ahead and study those things. But even then, you really have to experiment on your own. So a great way to do this is to really listen to some albums that you do like, in terms of styles of music that you like. If something that you hear, even if it sounds a little too advanced for your playing, if it stands out to you, sit down and take the time to try and figure it out by ear without jumping to the computer and looking up tabs. Because most of those tabs are all wrong anyways. I correct tablature all the time. And but I will give you there's some little landmarks that can help you that I still use. So let me grab my guitar real quick.